All right, so we just completed our first pass. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go through any questions on what we just did and how we did it. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask each team to report out on what they have created. Let me stop sharing that screen because I'm going to pop up the Miro screen. And I will share the Miro screen and the team can go through and just do a quick report out on, I'd like to hear, so here are the questions you need to answer. Tell us what groupings you have, the header name, and then I want to hear from each team member on what they thought of the process. And I'm going to open it up to the group to provide feedback on what's missing, what people think are missing from your work breakdown structure. So the way I'd like you to do this is go back, whoever the project manager is, I want you to start by going back and reminding everyone, back to your project brief, remind everyone what is your project. Then we'll shift over and look at the work breakdown structure. And then tell us about what groupings you have for your work breakdown structure. And then I do want to hear from every team member on this process of what was good, what was bad, what's difficult, you know, your thoughts on going through this process and your thoughts on especially doing this in silence. All right, so who wants to volunteer? Which team wants to volunteer to go first?
Team 4 would do it.
Which team?
Oh.
Team 4?
Yeah, Team 4.
Okay.
So our project is Husker project, installing new equipment. So we're planning phase. We looked at removing the old equipment. We're going to do, we got 14 pieces of equipment we need to remove and install, so we're going to do it in sections. We're going to do 4 machines at a time. So planning phase, that's what we decided. And then demolition phase, we're going to unwire the equipment, remove the spouting, and then remove all the equipment. And then reverse order, we're going to install the new equipment in, spouting, rewire, and then we're going to test it for a week and see if we're getting the quality that we want in order to proceed with the rest of the equipment.
So, okay. All right.
Sorry, I think I just did it all commingled. So our groupings, we got our planning phase, demolition phase, our install phase, and then our testing phase.
Okay. Now you said earlier that you had already started this project, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now we've already bored holes, and we're getting ready to start next week on removing equipment.
Okay, so let me ask a couple questions. Number one is, I see you got the 4 phases in here. The planning phase, although the planning phase seems to be missing all the planning stuff. I know that you said you've already done the work, right? So you guys are halfway through, or a good portion through. But on what I'd like you for the purpose of the class is to go back and if you have a planning phase, so everything that we're doing right now in this class, like the creation of the project brief, the creation of the work breakdown structure, and then, you know, the creating the budget and all that, that should be in your planning phase. So my question to you, if I look at what you have a title that says planning phase, but you have in there manage in-house labor, get quotes from contractor, lay out holes and placement, that typically, none of those things seem to fall in as a category of planning. Those are all things that you are actually doing.
Right.
So those may fall into, maybe the managing would be, you might have a different category that doesn't say planning, but that says management, right? Managing or that labor, where's that labor cost? Are you guys doing the demo yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, actually, we got a contractor. That was we didn't add that in, but
Okay.
that was part of the budget. We got outside contractors coming in on the 9th.
Okay. So if they're doing, so demo phase, when I look at demo phase, if they are doing, so help me understand, you have an outside contractor doing the demolition. Are they doing the demolition? Are they doing all those things that are listed there? Or are
Yeah.
you doing those?
The contractor is.
Okay. So what you should then, so that grouping, all of those things are things that should fall under the contractor. So you should have a contractor heading saying contractor is going to do this. What are you going to do? I suspect you're going to manage, you're managing.
We're going to manage the contractor, make sure he stays on task and hit these goals.
Okay. Everybody see the screen now? See what they've created? Team 4. So what you need to do is, okay, so from a schedule, from a work breakdown structure, you're going to have a header called supplier under demolition phase. And, but basically is who's going to manage, who's going to provide the oversight, who's going to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to doing. This is what the contract is doing. You're not doing this work. So you're not going to create a detailed schedule of this. You're going to ask the contractor to give you a schedule as to when they're going to complete this. And their scope of work should include all of this, that they're boring holes, they're doing the demo of the inlets, they're doing the demo of the old negative air, all of these things, these are things that they're doing. And when going back to manage in-house labor, what is your in-house labor doing?
So we got electricians. They're gonna help outside contractors also do wiring, electrical work, and then we're also gonna have a couple maintenance guys supporting the contractor as well.
Okay, so what I would, and again, you're going to have time to go work on this because everybody's going to go back and work on your work breakdown structure to make it more complete and more detailed. The purpose of what we just did is really to create a framework. What I'm already seeing, so remember what I said earlier when I talked about a work breakdown structure. You can create a work breakdown structure by deliverables, by project phase, by chunking of work, by how I want to manage it from a project perspective. And by doing this exercise, what happens is you guys automatically created that you really like to track the work by phase of work, right? Because you get a planning phase, you get a demo phase. So you just created your top level. Not only that, but you've also identified what things fall on those levels. But there are a lot of other missing pieces associated. So what I've heard you just say is there's a planning phase, so anything related to the planning phase. There's a demo phase, so anything related to the demo phase. It sounds like there's a wiring phase of the project, so anything related to the wiring of the phase, not the removal of the wiring, but the wiring phase. There is an installation phase, right? And is your testing phase a commissioning phase? In other words, you're testing, your test running, so you're doing the commissioning, so it's part of that. So that's your testing phase, okay? And so the other thing that I see that may be missing, you're installing new equipment. Is there a training phase? Are you going to train your operators on this?
We've already had a test piece of equipment ran last year, so they're already familiarized with the piece of equipment that we're installing.
Okay, and then the other piece associated with that is on you have a maintenance department?
Yep.
Okay, so is your maintenance department going to get trained on the equipment? Preventive maintenance on the equipment, or have they already?
Yeah, they have already.
Okay, all right. So these are things that you would look at from your project that you have that. But it sounds like, so the key thing right now is after we get done, after we take a break, you're going to come back and you're going to continue to detail under each one of these phases and the phases that are missing what tasks you need to perform, which tasks are being performed by you guys, which tasks are being performed by your subcontractor.
Okay.
Okay, so this is good. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So, and by the way, like I said, we're going to spend a lot more time on this. So you guys actually have a very detailed work breakdown structure. Let's go on to team 3. Okay, so team 3, let me pull yours up. All right, team 3. Again, remind us of your project, and then let's. Oh, wait a minute. You guys almost got off the hook. I still want to hear from each one of you in regards to what was your what were your thoughts on using the process, the affinity method? Was it easy, difficult? Who wants to go first? Ralph, since you started, what were your thoughts on that?
I liked it. I like the silence, the different brainstormings, because you get a different set of eyes and different set of opinions. So I'm open to this post-it and bringing silent brainstorming, because one person does tend to miss a lot. So it's nice to see a different set of eyes and different way of thinking.
Yep.
So it's not all in one person.
Exactly. Who's next? Ralph, why don't you pick the next person?
Oh, go ahead, Ralph. Who do you want?
Darius, go ahead.
It was me anyway, huh? Yeah, I think it's kind of neat to do it that way. It seems like what you would kind of do is have everybody do it individually and then walk into a meeting and put them together. Kind of would keep it, kind of how I think, kind of what the point would be, I guess. If you're doing it on paper, like what you're saying
so
you used to.
you can still do this in a classroom. Normally what we do is we do it in a room or a conference room. Come with your, we sit there for 10 minutes, generate Post-it notes, put them all on the wall. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to get everybody's, because every meeting, inevitably you have one or two people that don't say anything. They kind of just sit there and watch everybody else do it. Even if they have good input, they just choose not to put it out there. And a lot of times those people have really good ideas. So to me, this is a great way to get everybody to get all their ideas out, without having to have that type of personality.
Yep.
All right, Eric's going to go next.
Okay.
I didn't get to be involved in it, making the Post-it notes. My computer wouldn't let me get into the screen, but I wrote down all my stuff, and I can see you got people focusing on different areas of the project. When you write down your notes, then bring them all together, you can see the gaps that you left and everybody else left out. And it helps you fine tune the project.
Yep.
I like the way it does that. It gets everybody locked onto the same page.
Good.
All right, Rolando.
Yeah, I liked it. Gets everybody's input on what they think. Still a little bit hard for me putting the notes where they got to go to.
Okay. What was hard about it?
Just how you were going, that we didn't put the sticky notes where they were supposed to go. The planning phase.
Okay. So breaking them down and defining what groups they belong to.
Yeah.
But again, his understanding is this is a quick, because now you're going to have time to move stuff around, because I'm going to give you time to actually start creating. But just think of it this way. If we would have started, and if I would have asked you, I mean, you basically have, how many headers? 5?
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 headers. How long do you think it would have taken you to create those 5 headers and the things underneath those headers if I would have said, go do it the way you normally do it?
Well, normally,
Would
we
you have
wouldn't
done
even have
that?
had those headers.
What's that?
Normally, we wouldn't even have had those headers.
Okay, all right.
What we would have had is one piece of paper with a whole bunch of bullet points on things we think belong in there, and it would have been horribly disorganized. And as we move through phases, it would have changed colors to things that are complete, things that are behind on our timelines, and we wouldn't have had this type of structure at all. So
Okay.
even what we've done here in 7 minutes is better than what we historically would have done. So
Okay, so there you go. I mean, and that's the purpose, by the way, that is the purpose of doing this. It's not perfect. It's not 100%. I can tell you it's not 100%, but it does in a very short period of time. I mean, we basically did it in 45 minutes. It gives you a framework. Now you can work on it and refine it, right? But now you got a good framework to work from. And so that's really the purpose of the exercise. And I agree with you, Rolando. If this is the first time, it is challenging, it's difficult, but once you do it several times and you use it multiple times, it becomes easier and easier to the point it becomes a habit. And so good. But again, do want to hear and understand if some of you had challenges with this and understanding how the tool works. So good. Thank you guys. That was good.
The other thing it helps out too is you can visually see a lot of the times our timelines are a lot more tighter.
Yep.
And we can allow more time by having it spread out like this.
Yep. There you go. And you'll see how we start then taking this and creating your timeline and tying that together.
Okay.
That's going to be next week. Team 3.
Yeah, so we just had 2 people and our project manager's not here. So what we did was we just broke down our
Kevin, before you, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kevin, before you do that, can you explain what your project is?
Oh, yes, of course. We're doing a parking lot expansion. And this is an actual project at Barbarian Nut. And it is prepared, but we have not, we don't have all the final budgets. And yeah, so this is a good process, good exercise for us to do. So what we did, we broke down our groupings by kind of departments or categories. So we have our sponsor, which would be Barbarian Nut Company. And so this is the grouping with all coordination that interacts with the owner or the sponsor group. And then we also broke down our landscaping contractor, and then our electrical, and then we included our fence contractor because the fence contractor is included for just an electric gate opener. And so we included them in there. And then finally we have our asphalt contractor, and that's for paving and striping. So fairly simple. Sorry, I'm trying to move the thing on your screen. We also have some underground plumbing as well. So for irrigation and water. And so we have a plumbing contractor.
Okay.
And personally, what I thought of the process, I thought it was going to be a little difficult with JJ and I not being able to communicate, and then the 2 of us just putting up ideas, so we couldn't collaborate necessarily. And as you can see, we duplicated almost everything just from our own mindsets. I thought it was a good exercise it was kind of like a game. You had to think of, okay, what's something else that we need to get that isn't in there now? And so trying to come up with new things. And that's good, because in the real projects, there's always that 1 or 2 little things that nobody thought about, or nobody thought, oh, we actually need to have a vendor do that, or oh, that's got to be done in-house because it's so small. We're finishing up a project right now, and we had a single air actuated gate. And we put in the system that we would have air, but nobody put in there who was going to install the solenoid that controlled the air.
Okay.
And so the electrician was ready to wire the solenoid, and the contractor that built the equipment was like, well, we made accommodations for an air cylinder, but nobody was going to make it talk or work together. So we ended up having to kind of come up at the last minute and do it. So yeah, that was my thoughts. JJ?
At first, actually, I've never done this before like this. At first, I thought it would be difficult, just obviously what Kevin said, just because of the communication, not being able to communicate. But it worked, watching kind of where he was on the board, and then I just started dropping in mine. As you can see, there is a lot of duplicates, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It means that we're thinking kind of on the same page about, how we were gonna organize it by sponsor, landscaping contractor, plumbing contractor, kind of meshed together well, that we were on the same page of how this would inevitably be broken down. So I think it worked. It actually worked really well.
Good. Does anybody else have any feedback to them before I provide my feedback? Anyone? Chewy? Luke?
No feedback. They did a good job.
You sure about that?
Well, no, I'm not sure. I kind of was just dozing off for a second. I'm not gonna lie,
Okay.
but I haven't really looked at their organization. I know JJ mentioned that they have a lot of duplicates, and I see that. That's not a bad thing, obviously. But there's no, I guess, is there a
What's missing?
timeline for any of this?
Say that again?
Is there a timeline?
No,
for
not
any-
yet. Not yet. We're not there at the timeline. But what's missing? Can anybody say what's missing from what's here? We got the sponsor coordination. We've got the
Verbs.
what's that?
Verbs.
Well, one is verbs. Yeah. But what major activities are missing? Or possibly phases of a project that are missing?
Financials.
Budget?
Financials. I heard financials. There's the actual planning phase that should be on here someplace. So these are some of the things for you, Kevin, to add to this is everything related to planning. You got the coordination piece, and that's great, but the coordination piece doesn't quite state, here's the planning, the developing of the plan that you're going to then coordinate with your sponsors. So that needs to be there. What about, okay, let me step back. So if I look at this, a piece that's missing off of this, there's the planning piece. The other thing is, what about the warranty and support function of this, right? Is there, where's that piece as it relates to monitoring for a period of time? Are you asking your subcontractors for a warranty period?
I don't think so. I mean, nothing on this kind of project would warrant that other than, quality assurance of like the paving, in my experience.
Well, that's all part of warranty, by the way. When you look at that as workman, quote unquote, the workmanship, right?
Yeah.
The quality of workmanship, which should be part of an insurance. I think one of the things we did mention the other day was ensure there's compatibility between the asphalt that they're using versus the asphalt that you have, because that could potentially cause a problem, right? The same thing with I'm assuming was the plumbing related to the landscaping, or is that separate?
Yeah, it's related to the landscaping.
Okay.
So it's the approach and the exit. They're going to landscape it to match the rest.
Okay.
That's why there was coordination to placement and type.
Okay.
Mentioned.
How about drainage is part of the plumbing?
The drainage is already done. Yeah, it was all subgraded and the underground grading was all done ahead of time. It just drains to one side to a culvert. So it's pretty basic.
Okay. So make sure you put your planning piece in there.
Okay.
I'm trying to think anything else. I think that's pretty much it. The other thing is, one of the things that I would suggest for each of your subcontracts that you have when you do this is to identify what are the critical things that you want to make sure is included in their scope of work. You're going to be performing managing the landscaper contractor, but what specific things you've already identified: the install of the sprinklers, the placement of the sprinkler timer, I'm assuming the controller for that, plant placement, yeah, those type of things. What are the things that you need to make sure are included in the what they're providing to you? And part of that is also defining the scope of material that they're going to. Are you selecting the controller, or are they selecting the controller for landscape?
Yeah, it would be something that they would provide. So we would go to them and say, we want, sprinklers, this many plants installed in this area. They would provide us with the quote, with their documentation and their selected timer,
Right.
and then we would approve it.
Okay, so there's the piece that I think is also missing, is, now that you bring that up, is you guys planning to define the requirements for your landscape, for the plumbing, for the asphalt, and for your electrical. And I'm not talking about writing a whole book on what's your requirements, but what are the minimum requirements that you need to provide for each one of them. So defining your requirements.
Mm-hmm. I think I was a little confused when you said you wanted us to place the tasks.
Yeah.
The work tasks, not the planning. I didn't catch anything about planning in this. In my notes that I wrote down, it said basically we were talking about the people doing the work. That's what we were looking at. So
the task. So, okay. So when we talk about
management team stuff, it was what I was under the impression of. So now that you've clarified that, I think I understand a little bit more what you're expecting.
Okay. When you create your work breakdown structure, you have to include all the work that is related to the project. And so the planning phase is that's part of the work that you have to do with the project. So you got to make sure you do that. And if you do it the first time, that becomes your template. So next time, what really the planning steps are not going to change from project to project. If you remember, I said that at the very beginning this morning.
Yeah.
That's not going to change. So all that's going to be is a standard template that you drop into your every single project that you do. What's going to change are going to be the specifics. Like in this case, you got landscaping. So, you're going to add that. You got plumbing, you got electrical. You may have a category, let's say you're swapping out equipment. You may have a category that has electrical, not fence electrical, but electrical. But then you can define the specific task for that project, what electrical work you're going to perform. And so part of this is understanding that what you want to do is start building a common project phasing that you do on all your projects. And eventually you're going to see, and it doesn't take very long, after probably a handful of projects, you're going to see some commonalities between all the projects. And then those pieces you can just make as standard templates to drop in on any project. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So those are all things you're going to add. Don't worry, you guys are all going to have time to add stuff to each one of these projects. Again, we're only focusing on the introduction piece. Team 2. I'll bring yours up in here in a minute. Anyone have any other questions or comments for them?
I think the only comment that I have a question, I know they're in a similar business as us, so harvest is coming up. Are you going to work around the harvest schedule? Is that in the back of your mind? Is this going to be after harvest?
So we set ourselves a 3-month timeline, and our harvest is scheduled for 6 weeks. So we could be doing some underground work while the harvest is happening. but weather permitting, we can do this all after harvest.
Okay. Team 2, remind us of your project, and then let's walk through what you guys created.
Yeah, so and you can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So the project is the user onboarding project for ClockShark, and what it involves is creating a onboarding workflow essentially in the mobile app that our end users have in the field, so they can get onboarded to the app and use it more successfully after they download it and log into it. Right now, there's no onboarding that happens, and it's done through a third-party tool that ClockShark uses for our support process. So right now, the end users can reach out to us for support through this third-party tool, but we can create a new onboarding flow that also functions through this tool as well.
Okay.
And so we've got some groups here. We didn't quite get all the headers on each group before the time expired, but we have design and implement the welcome video. So one of the first things that they'll get in this onboarding flow is a short video. And so we have stickies there, things like write the welcome video script, record welcome video, and so on. Before that, and these aren't in any particular order, but before that would be develop the system readiness, which basically means in order to use this onboarding tool in the third-party app that we have to do some engineering work with the software development kit that they have. We just have to upgrade it basically in the system so that we can use this new feature that they've made available to us to create onboarding flows. So let's develop system readiness. Over on the right is test and analyze. And so that is after it's all said and done and the onboarding flow is completed, getting out to, having it be available to a beta test of groups, people out in the field. They can test it, get some feedback. Underneath that, we have test internally. So once we're done creating the content for this onboarding flow, testing it internally before we do that. Plan messaging. So, determine the onboarding specifics, scoping the work that needs to be done to create templates, designing the user experience, anything related to the actual messaging that they're going to see through this onboarding flow. And then the other two groups, we didn't get the headers completed there. But it's basically, creating the actual slides and doing the work for what they'll see in the onboarding flow, and then, monitoring it after it's launched and scheduling check-ins and make sure everything's working right.
So this one is create slides. What slides are those?
So I call them slides. So the tool, it's the mobile carousel is the name of the feature in our third-party tool that we have. And so it's basically what it is. It's like a series of slides that the end users will look through after they download the mobile app. And it'll give them the video on the first slide, and then the next slides will be how to use the app.
Okay. And this other one is monitor
After launch, schedule check-ins. Those we didn't really get to talk about that one too much. So.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have questions? Comments? I would say the same thing as the others. The planning phase should be included in this. You may want to consider creating conduct testing as your grandparent, and then underneath that you can have, because it looks like you have multiple types of testing that's going on. It looks like you got internal and you got beta testing, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah, internal and then external, essentially. Yeah.
So those basically can become as a subset of conducting testing. And then each one can break that down. Because again, remember, you're building a family tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can, again, instead of having, I mean, you could, if you want to manage it that way, you can certainly do that. But you can certainly just have the whole thing of conducting testing. But the planning piece is missing. Is there any coordination or acquisition of systems or acquisition of services that you're going to need?
No, we already have the service, so all we need to do is just upgrade the SDK to be able to use that specific feature that our service has added. So.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have time to break this down and go further. Okay, so same question. How easy, how difficult? Comments on the process from the team?
I like the process. It's one thing for me is how specific, I'm not sure how specific to get in this exact part, or do we get more specific? When you say planning, right? Like, okay, so scope the work to be done is planning, right? That's what would be part of the planning phase, right?
So when we talk about planning, is the creation of the project brief, creation of the work breakdown structure. I mean, everything that we're doing should be listed on there, because overall that should be the plan, right? Again, this is the first time you guys are going through this, so I know this is what you're learning right now, but having a post-it that says planning, and under that you're going to have everything related to creating the plan, the project brief, the work breakdown structure, the schedule. The schedule equates to the timeline, and then the communication with your sponsor or getting buy-off from whoever the customer is.
Got it.
All that should be part of the overall plan.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. So I enjoy it. I enjoyed creating the stickies and silence, and then doing all that together. I've done that before, not in a specific project management, but just with a different type of thing we were doing. But yeah, it's helpful. And yeah, just making sure the detail is there is what I've keep learning every time we do this. So
good.
Jamie, what did you think?
So I really liked this tool, this structure, particularly because we're kind of an oddball group, right? There's only one of us that's actually working in this industry, so not all of us have the tools and language to communicate effectively about what's actually happening. But during the silent phase, we all contributed pretty significantly, and I thought that was really cool. It kind of cut through the language barrier because we just put everything out there. And then even in the organization, I felt like we were all kind of coalescing, and the problem that we ran into was trying to put a label on our groups because we didn't understand the language. We couldn't communicate the language together to, settle on what that group should be called. So that was kind of cool to look back and see, wow, that beginning part of it was so clear. And at least for me, I felt like I was just like, it was a really good flow without the restrictions of the language.
Good.
Krista.
I liked it. I've done a affinity diet or brainstorming a few times. This is the first time I've done it on this platform though, and I have to say I like it. Like in the past, especially with bigger groups trying to do these affinity brainstormings, they're beneficial, but this seemed a little bit more streamlined, and it was easier to collaborate with the rest of the team members. So I liked it, and I think that's really all I have to share. It's a good process, and I trust the output after multiple times using this. It gets you to a good place, like thinking about stuff that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. So, and you do get those introverts to contribute a little bit easier.
Yep, it becomes easier, although there's always someone who's not necessarily willing, but It's a good tool, and I agree with you, Krista. Doing it this way on this, using this tool, using this software, it does help. I mean, Mike, you know, we had a very large group when we did this with you guys, and that was challenging at times, and so this does help simplify it. So I agree with you with that comment, and so this may be a new practice for us down the road. So appreciate that comment.
Yeah, just to kind of put that in perspective, Jess, with everybody, that's, Mike, I think it was what, 25 to 28 core team members for 9 months brainstorming the entire business process.
Yeah, it was some brain damage for sure. It paid off. It did.
Good. I guess that leaves Julie.
When I was today years old, I was introduced to affinity brainstorming, and I'm going to insist that it be used more often in my world from now on.
There you go. It should. It should.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. As an introvert, I come to the table with lots of ideas. I come prepared. I've read the manual. And by the time others are done sharing unfiltered thoughts that popped into their head, the meeting's over. So I love this. I'm excited.
Good.
I think it's really helpful.
Good. Mike, do you want to reflect on this? Like you said, you lived through this 9 months, and then you did it multiple times after that. So
Yeah, I think it's really helpful when you have very dominant voices in the room. I think that's probably the number one thing that you can. It just levels the playing field, and it allows people to cover all their bases. If you have one person talking at one time, you just can't get through as much work as we have all done, like you said, Jess, in such a short time. So if we didn't do this, it would, at least at the business I was at, it would have taken twice as long. So I think it's a valuable tool, and I use it for everything. I use it with my kids. I use it all the time. So yeah, it's great. It's a good little tool to help digest something, anything you really need.
yeah, but just wait until your kids become teenagers, then they use it on you. Trust me, I'm living that now.
There you go.
The other comment I want to address is that this particular group is made up of Luke. This is your project, right? And the balance of your team members are not familiar with the language of what you do. Here's the reality. One of the reasons, and I know that the other projects we have going for pretty much are folks that have a common language. But when you're working on a project, and Krista, to the point of the mill where we had cross-functional folks, not everybody speaks the same language. And doing this allows, even the ideas may be the same, the language may be different, but it does allow some common thinking to take place when you do this, even if you don't know the language. And so that's the other thing, is just recognize that not everyone in the same company speak the same language. And I'm not talking about Spanish versus English. I'm talking about accounting folks have their own language. Engineers and designers have their own language. The guys that work or running the machines have their own language. The maintenance guys have their own language. Everyone's got their own language. By doing this, it allows them to put, based on the language they know, to put their ideas up there, and they may be very common ideas. And that helps a lot, because what often happens in a room, and you're throwing ideas out there, people, like Julie said, there's some introverts that I don't understand the language, that's why I'm not going to say anything, okay? And so that restricts people from throwing ideas out there. So this tool really helps address some of those issues. Okay. Yep.
Yes, not only is the language different, but sometimes the educational levels are different.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. And that has a lot to do with the language piece, is what words they use to describe the same thing, right? And so, again, when we go through the process of grouping things, people still thinking in a language, and then they start to recognize, oh, this means the same thing through that conversation, right? Hence why we have the data dictionary, because sometimes we have to, you know, we all use the same word, but it means different things. So we got to make sure that we write down and say, what, when we use this word in this room with all the team members, what is it that this really means to all of us? And so that's another reason for having the data dictionary, because we all use the same words, but they may mean completely different things in the worlds that we work in on a daily basis. And so that's why it's important to do that. And it's important we have it in silence. And it's also important to have these conversations as we go through, because normally what we will do is go through, which we are going to do, but we're going to break out in teams when we do this, is go through and read every post-it to make sure we understand what's in there, what does that mean, and if we need to move it around. That goes back to, we're going to move into the next stage, which is the stage to review what's on there. Does it make sense? Doesn't make, if it doesn't make sense, why doesn't it make sense, right? Brainstorming should be about brainstorming, generating ideas. It's not about not putting ideas down. It's not about throwing ideas out. It's about generating as many ideas as possible. And again, some of the craziest ideas are sometimes the best ideas. So that leaves team 1 of 1. So
take it away, Guy. This is your project.
Nice try, Chewy.
Now, Chewy, it's your turn.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be alone today and also lucky enough to have an expert to, even though it was a quiet time, I did have some questions and he was available to answer them. Basically, we just threw out.
Chewy, what's the project your team's working on?
It's an implementation of an ERP system, specifically inventory flow. So we started just throwing out ideas and grouping them, like hardware systems and support, on-site Wi-Fi capabilities. We noticed that we currently have issues with Wi-Fi in our facility, so we got to work through those and just wanted to throw those out there. Obviously, software selection piece, and we got to determine what functionality we want for our business versus what's out there. So vetting of software, then different software modules, got a budget review section, a current process versus future needs, an ROI for our financial people, for the state of the business, planning, right? We got planning. So budget initiation, we requesting quotes and then reviewing them. Project scope, and finally testing and training of software.
Okay. It's pretty good, Chewy. Anybody have comments for Chewy? No?
JJ, maybe?
You sure? This is your chance.
Speak now, JJ.
No, I don't have any.
No, I'm sure we're gonna obviously grow this list. Bill and Brad are gonna jump on this tomorrow, and can't wait to hear their contributions.
Yeah, but sure, you got to push to make sure they do. The other thing, there's some of these things that are on here that probably will not apply based on the scope that you guys defined of what is included and what is not included. Although some of the things that I see, probably the majority of the things in here, they might change, the headers might change. But these are all things that you really need to look at. The only thing is maybe a little higher emphasis on the user requirements for the inventory management system, and understanding what are the requirements, the users, what do they need?
What's the
Mhm.
outputs that they need? I know it's kind of up there, but that's probably one that needs to be better defined. I like the fact that you threw the whole issue of on-site Wi-Fi, because now, remember, like I said, here's a perfect example. If we go back to your project brief, if we go back to the project brief, there's nothing in there that talks about in your, or where is it down here? Where, what is included, what is not included? That's an
Yeah.
important one to determine what is or what is not included, because that's one that doesn't show up in there, but yet it sounds like that's one of a critical piece. And so that is related more to your infrastructure. So pieces related to your infrastructure. So now this is a good, this is a perfect example of something that you define in the work breakdown structure. You know, we really need to look at that and take care of that. And maybe we need to include that in what is included and what is not included.
Yeah.
Because that may change how management looks at what should be. Because in here it said not included was, let's see, internal
Hardware.
costs only, internal allocation of hours implement. Doesn't include costs of hardware for IT. If I read that, that says Wi-Fi is not included in this. But if you don't take care of Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter what software you pick.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So that's a perfect example that at every time that we work on the next step, we need to go back and look at our project brief, and we may need to adjust and refine it. But that's a perfect example. And so, so that was good. Good. That's a good one. That's a good call out. That there's already a conflict between what's included and what's not included, and based on saying the work you need to perform.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Julie, the only thing I'd recommend is when you have Bill and Brad go back and do this is walk them through this process. Actually, you tell them how this works. Give them the 10 minutes to brainstorm, and then give them the 10 minutes to put them into buckets and create new buckets and move things around, and then you guys all review it together. So just walk them through the exact way we did it and tell them that those are the rules.
Got it.
Which leads into what we're going to do next. So each of you, each team is going to go back. I'm going to send you back into the teams, and for the rest of the session, for at least the next 30 minutes, I want you to then go through your work breakdown structure, rearrange it. I'd like you across the top, like this kind of shows, but across the top, but you can shrink, by the way, all of these can, you know, you can shrink your sticky notes, right, by just grabbing them and shrinking them. That way you can add more stuff on this board. Okay, so just shrink the board size, keep everything inside the board size. So what I'd like you to do is go across the top should be your number them 1, 1.0, 2.0 all the way through, and then inside number the headers 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 2.1, 2, and so on and so forth. Add the additional headers or the additional columns that are missing, the planning piece for those that are missing, or anything else that you guys can think of. The easiest way to do is to go through and take under each heading. You guys have the largest number of headers, but under each header, go ahead and brainstorm to see if anything else is missing. So you guys practice what we just did, but you do it header by header versus doing the big picture. And if something is missing, then brainstorm for that header that's missing and the components or the tasks that are missing for that. And just use the tool. I'm going to let you guys do it. I'm going to be popping into each group, and you can also talk through it. But this is your opportunity in the next 35 minutes for you to complete or get as much of this done as far as the work breakdown structure. And then this is going to lead us to what we're going to do on Thursday, because from here on in, whatever you come up with today, we're going to be using to start doing our labor hours, our material cost estimates, and all that other stuff is going to come out of this piece. So try to be as complete as possible for the work that needs to be done. Any questions on that? No questions? Everybody got that?
So I'm going to set the room for 30 minutes, actually 25 minutes now, and you'll get a 1-minute warning before we come out and we do our reflections. Everybody got that? So I'm not going to set a timer. It's just that when you get the warning, actually, I'll give you a 2-minute warning. You get the 2-minute warning, and then we'll come back and do a reflection, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next. But I will be dropping in with each team, so if you got some questions, that's the time to ask when I drop in. Everybody got that? Yes? All right. Here we go.
don't forget, guys, to add the planning piece to yours.
Yeah, we're working on Eric's computer real quick. He's
Okay.
still having problems.
Okay. Yeah, get as much as you can, and I'll be dropping by a couple times. And get as much as you can. You'll still have an opportunity to work on this on a Friday for a little bit before we move on to the next piece.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we need to add one more,
Well, you can put it under the.
How's it going?
Well, pretty much everything that we had put before was scope of work type stuff. So we're trying to reorganize so that it's cohesive.
Yeah, that's well, no, here's the thing on the scope of work. That's just part of your planning, so you don't have to create a whole category. Just
Oh, I see. Okay.
it's just under that one that says 1.3 solidify scope. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
Do you want us to start deleting the duplicates?
Yeah, you can start consolidating. So
Okay.
and if you need to reword it, you may have this. It may mean the same thing, but consolidated to so it means the same thing to both of you. The other thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is because you're missing Susie and Josh is in the next couple of days is to get with them and run through just like we asked Chewy to run through with Brian and with Brad and Bill. You guys do the same thing, and so let them add anything that maybe they see that you guys didn't see. Okay, as you go through this process.
Do you have a way of helping us get in communication with them? I have none of their contact information.
Oh, I can. Okay, so what I'll do is I will send you their email addresses. Okay. I'll send it to both of you, and you guys can chime in with them.
Okay. So how do we, I'm still a little confused after planning. Are we just, are our other headers in line? I mean, they're just different aspects of each part of the job?
Yep.
Okay.
So your headers, like I said, your project is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's very basic compared to a lot of the others.
Right. So yours is straightforward because most of the work that you're doing is coordinating. Right, and providing oversight for the for your subcontractors, and the contractors are the ones doing all the work. And so, but you can define what you've done is good is to identify what should be in their scope of work to you. So think of it this way: in a normal process, you would be asking them to what you're doing is what they should be doing so they can provide you in their contract. Here's the scope of work. Here's the timeline. Should show you what tasks they're going to do and when they're going to do it based on the timeline you gave them. So they should fit their work inside your large overall timeline. And most of the work that you're going to be doing is predominantly providing oversight and making sure they get done. And if they have any issues of coordination between other contractors, that's on you to go take care of that for them. So in this case, you're acting like what we would call a general contractor. You're coordinating these different efforts.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you're going to use your own people to do any particular work, everything's a subcontract out.
Yeah, no, I was planning on contracting this stuff out.
Yeah. But defining what you did in each one of these groups is defining what you expect their scope of work to be. And so you need to make sure that number one, you explain to them what you expect as what you're expecting as their scope of work. And then they need to come back to you as part of the contract or your estimate or their estimate or their proposal to you is, here's the scope of work. Same thing that I'm asking you guys to define what's included, what's not included. They should be providing you that as part of your either the estimate or proposal to you.
So would their proposal be under their header, or would it be under the planning stage, under just securing contracts?
Under securing contracts, so there's two pieces of the equation. Under their own work is their creating of the proposal. For you, as the oversight, is you're evaluating their proposals, or you're evaluating their quotes, or you're evaluating what they're offering you. So to you, your task within your function is the review of proposals. That's basically it. That's really the task that you're really talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
But you can communicate to them and let them know, here are the things that we expect to be in your proposal. That way they have a better understanding. Just like you would communicate to your your sponsor, they should be doing the same thing with you if you're the one doing all the coordination.
Mm-hmm.
How's it going?
Well, we're working through how our brains are working right now. Talk us through the phases and the milestones. So there's two ways of looking at it, right, Jess? There's so imagine one area of this project is the welcome video. So you have plan the welcome video, design the welcome video, create the welcome video, launch the welcome video. So that is a chunk of work.
Right. So that's a phase so that whole thing is the creation and launching, right? So the header could be create and launch a welcome video. And then under that, you can have multiple sub projects related to that. One is the creation and then the implementation or release.
Correct. Now, but you could also do it another way, correct?
Yep.
You could take your planning, right? The planning for not just the welcome video, but planning for every other element of this project and create.
Correct. So when I refer to the planning is you should have a column, basically, a header that says planning, and under that planning is basically that's the project that's planning the overall project.
Mhm.
And then all the other columns could be pieces of the work that needs to be performed during the execution phase. Because remember back, the way to link this back is look at your project lifecycle that we talked about, right? There's the initiate, there's the planning, there's the execution and control. And so basically all the planning is really what we do for the initiate and for the planning stage of the life cycle. And all those other pieces are the pieces that we're going to go do during the execution phase.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but it could be done. Well, I'm trying to.
Yes, it could be done multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
But as a team, you need to determine which way makes more sense for you to manage the work.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means breaking all the work down into smaller chunks in order to manage the work, then that's what you should do.
Okay. So Luke, my question to you then would be, and we'll take the welcome video as an example. Is there going to be a type? Is there a specific group of people who are going to be working directly on the welcome video, or is it going to be split up into the planning and then the design and then the creation?
So the welcome video, as an example, would be one person that would be, well, no, I guess there's a few people. So you'll have the one person who will write the script for the video and then record the video. And then the implementation phase, the different person, I mean, in this case, it would probably be me for both of those. But in the so once it's written and recorded, then it'll be implemented into the user onboarding flow into the program, into the tool after it's written and recorded.
Got it.
So if I heard you correctly, here would be my view of that piece. So design and implement the welcome video. Okay, so one activity, because it's not an individual task, one activity is to write the script.
Yep.
Right? So write the script that's one task, one activity. Write the script. Two is to record the content.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Another one would be, as part of the design, is then to another task would be to what's the word I'm looking for? Is to put together the video, right? Because you have the raw footage, and then they're going to review it, and then they're going to cut it, and make it look nice and pretty, right? So whatever you guys call that, edit. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Is edit the video. That's another activity. That's another task, right? And don't look at how many people or who. We're going to get to that point. But that activity is then edit the video, and then edit and package. I would say edit and package, right? Because you want to package it the way you want to send it out. So that should complete then the creation of the video, right? The implementation piece maybe is the loading up of the video on YouTube or whatever site you're using, right, to load, or your website, right? And then somebody would need to test it to see, right? So then you would have a group test or test the video. You may want to do tests beforehand before you load it up onto the website,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
right, you may want to do combination of tests. But all that would fall, in my opinion, would fall under the design, implementation, and welcome. Okay, we're running out of time here, so everyone should have gotten a notice.
Yep.
Get as much as you can done. You're still going to have some more time on Friday. But also, if you guys want to get in there between now and Friday, you guys are welcome to do that.
Got it. Okay. So we should probably, because I was originally thinking like, oh, everything that's needs to be designed and created may go under the one header, but you think it'd be better to break them out specifically by actual task?
Well, see, the thing with testing, you have to decide whether you want one big test, do everything under a test, or things could have separate. My personal practice is to have the tests separate.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time that I would put a big test if it's a commissioning. I use the term for commissioning. That's when I'm going to turn it and test it for the end customer. If I'm doing internal testing to verify that things are working, I just put it under the column that the work's being performed.
Okay.
Okay. But that's how I would do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the way you need to do it.
Got it.
Okay. You guys decide as a team how you want to do it.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right. Is this everyone? Are we missing someone? Oh, I did get a couple texts about some people dropping off. Okay, everybody's back. All right, everyone is back. Good. Okay. So we've got about 20 minutes to do our reflections, or a little bit over 20 minutes. Like I said, so our next session is Friday. You will have a little bit of time, probably like 30 minutes to work on this, and then we're going to move on to the next topic, which again is we're still going to be working on the work breakdown structure, except we're going to be working on the next piece. So if you still need to add things, you can certainly are welcome to add things and rearrange things. But after that, we're going to have to lock in. After Friday, we have to lock it in because we have to start working on budgets and numbers. So, any questions on today? You know, our standard practice is to do reflections. So I do want to hear from everyone. And if you have the opportunity to turn your video on, because I'd like to see what you guys look like when you're doing your reflections. Because I know, like Guy, he makes funny faces. So just want to see that. All right, who wants to go first? Again, usual question. Any reflections, any thoughts on today? Good information, bad information, confusing information, any aha moments today? So standard reflection. So who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I really liked this during the lecture portion. You shared some pictures also of different groups doing with the whiteboards with the sticky notes all over.
Yep.
I like that. And then I also like the fact that the way you explained, you have, different people from all variety of experience, and they get to work together. on this. I could totally see this on our next big project with my normal, we call it our CapEx team. So that's the ones we're planning our capital expenditures for the next year. We have our lead financial controller. We have our general manager, plant manager, processing managers, and then facilities managers are all involved in that just to make the planning. And I could totally see us going through and doing these type of things.
Yep.
And using a tool very similar to this, or just doing the sticky notes on the wall.
Yep.
And I could definitely see the benefit of just planning. And so to me, I had the aha moment. It was like, oh, I wish I had this at our last project, which buttons up today. So to me, that's what it made sense with. I did struggle with understanding what the whole WBS was supposed to encompass and entail. And so I think I have a little bit better understanding of it now than I did before we started this class for sure, and better than I did halfway through this session. So
good. We're not done with the WBS. This is only the first step, and you'll see what additional things we add, which are going to be very beneficial, especially when you're looking at creating a budget or determining costs for a particular project, because that's really the next big chunk that we're going to be working on is not only that, and then identifying the resources that you're going to need in order to perform the work. Now, in your case, as I mentioned when we were in the breakout group, is most of the parking lot project, most of the work is being done by outsourced, by subcontractors doing the work. So that one is a little harder to do because you're just handing work out. But it's good to run through this so you can better define or establish expectations of what do you expect from the subcontractors to provide you.
Yeah,
like we talked about, and that's an important piece. So good. No, that's good. I like that. Good. So go ahead, Kevin. Pick the next person.
Oh, let's go to the next person on the list is Julie.
Reflections. Well, this was a good exercise. I've learned a little bit about ClockShark and what they're doing. So that was fun. In the middle of all this learning today, I had to negotiate for the release of a hostage from a fiscal perspective. So this has been an interesting day, but I still got a lot out of it. So thank you, everyone.
Good. Good. You get to pick the next person, Julie. You're on mute. You're on mute.
How about Krista?
Perfect. I was hoping you'd pick me. Thank you. So I had a couple reflections today, and I found it interesting, the financial and project disconnect. And since I don't really work very much on the financial side at all, I could totally see that happening easily, especially at Lumberg. And so follow-ups for me is I want to ask my manager on how I can avoid that with projects, or at least minimize it. And the next time I had a learning as we were doing this as a team for the work breakdown affinity brainstorm is next time I'm leading a brainstorm, I'm going to try to provide more clarity than I have in the past leading them on what level of granularity to get to at that first pass. Because I think today, I'm not sure all of us were on the same level of granularity. And I think that when we went to put them all together, it became clear.
Good. Good. You pick the next person there, Miss Krista.
Jamie.
Go team 2. So the reflection that I have for today is kind of related to the language thing that we were talking about a little earlier. I really appreciate this tool because we have a very small team and we all get our work done, and I think we work pretty well as a team, but we all have a tendency to retreat a little bit into our own processes. And I think this is a really good tool to help us understand our individual priorities and what we focus on to better serve the dynamics of the team. So all this is really good, and I'm sure it wasn't necessarily designed for team building. I think it could be a really good way to find insight into your team members.
Actually, yes. Those of us that facilitated on facilitation, when we do the affinity,
exercise, it gives us a lot of insight into the team dynamics in an organization, on how well they're on the same page or not on the same page thinking. The other thing, it also, we've had a couple instances that interesting. I've had one, and I'll give you an example. We had one client in Boston that when we did this high level exercise early on, they identified their engineering function as being external to the rest of the organization. And I found out interesting because that's how they treated each other at arm's length, which was not a good thing, which caused a lot of problems. And so it does give a lot of insight to how an organization works or doesn't.
Just to kind of add to what Jess was saying, all the tools that we teach are kind of in the lean bucket along with the affinity method. One output, if used in the way you've seen it today, that they generate is a cultural shift and a cultural change. So it's one thing to manage a project and to create a process and drive change that way, but the key to all of this really is the cultural side of it. So it is a huge team building component. I mean, Mike can probably attest to it. When I first went with his company, a lot of smart people, a lot of really driven individuals and whatnot, but a year later when we got through it, it really helped define individuals, their characters, their personalities, how to build teams, how to start defining which people are going to work with others better and whatnot. So there's a cultural side to this. There's an output of it that works really well.
So pick the next person.
I want to hear from Chewy.
Thank you, Jamie. I was hoping you'd pick me too. So I can come at me. No, one thing I learned, or more than learned, reaffirmed, I think, my belief of involving not just management, but supervisors and below, because they're the subject matter experts around here. I don't have to be the all-encompassing knowledge of the whole plant. I think I got to rely on our supervisors and leads to be able to provide some feedback on projects. Because usually what we tend to do here is just come up with a good idea and say, okay, let's do it. And then when it comes to actually laying it out and making it work, we rely on our leads and supervisors to do the day-to-day. And sometimes they're the ones struggling with our decision making. So if we involve them from day one, I think we'll get their perspective and their buy-in much more better.
Yep. That's one of the key things of doing it this way and using these set of tools. It's to get people to buy in. When people participate and throw their ideas in there, and even if their ideas don't get picked, going through the process, at least they've been heard, right? And then at the end, the group decides this is not what we're going to do, but everyone has participated. Now, it's again, you're not always going to make everyone happy, but now you've got, at least they participated, their ideas were on the table, they got evaluated, we had the discussion, and then we decided as a group to go in this direction. So it becomes easier to get buy-in.
Yep.
It's critical to include every level of the organization in projects. And that, I mean, your highest knowledge base for what actually happens in the business, forget about what's documented, forget about what management thinks. Your highest area to go to is the person that touches the product. So an operator that touches the equipment and transforms the product or service or whatever it may be, those are the individuals that can tell you exactly what's happening on the day-to-day and the facts about what reality is.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have that as the basis for what your project starts off from, because I'm guessing a lot of you have probably worked on projects where you get to go implement and all of a sudden you go, oh, now I've got a problem because we didn't consider XYZ. We didn't know XYZ because we never asked the right people.
Correct.
Or the people that are actually touching the product and doing the actual work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, pick the next person.
I'll do Rolando.
Yes, I like this sticky note. I'm sure we'll be using it here in the next projects we got. Like all the inputs from all the rest of the team here from Sun West Milling. And like Darius was saying, we just use bulletins. We just go off of the age and in order, but nothing like this. So I did like the exercise.
Good. You pick the next
We got Eric that's gonna go.
All right.
Yeah. I like the idea of the sticky notes, how it takes everybody's ideas, bring them together, even though they might duplicate, they might be thinking other areas similar to the same thing. We're able to get the sticky notes up there and then talk out what our thought process was. It just seems to be opening up the line of communication between all the team members a lot easier, and everybody can see the thought process. So I'm going to go with Ralph. Is Ralph there?
Ralph, you still here? No, I think Ralph and Darius had to step away for a little bit.
Yeah, except that, yeah, I think they dropped off. Okay, so let's see who's left. There's two. One or two.
I'll go.
JJ.
Kind of like everybody else had already said, I think this is really good for getting all parties involved and eliminating any kind of disconnect that you can have between what different people are thinking within. I also thought that it was, let me think. I think that's it, actually. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Luke?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a good learning a lot in organizational skills too, right? Project management, trying to organize the stickies and figure out the best way. You know, we had one way that we did in the beginning of today, and then I kind of, in my brain, it started coming together in a different way, and I still don't know which is the right way, so we're going to tighten that up on Friday. But it's when you know, the way we're doing stuff that we've always done stuff is kind of haphazard, and this definitely points out where a lot of those, you know, issues come from when you're trying to get stuff done is just, you know, writing down a document with, you know, bullet points on how to do stuff, and then not thinking about how everything is involved and getting it organized. This has been super helpful so far in the first week and a half. So
Good. Good. I think that's it, Mike. Closing remarks.
Yeah, I just thought today was a good exercise in team building and getting through. Like they have said, we have a group that's from different industries and typically don't speak the same language, and so getting together and having some team building, I think just discussing is part of building a team, and grinding through the struggles together also will build a stronger team and using the tools. So we'll get through this one and get better on the backside for it. So I enjoyed today, and I enjoyed the tools as always.
Good. Guy?
Yeah, I would just tell everyone to keep in mind that although you're learning a new tool, not only the Zoom software, but the affinity methods and the tools related to what we're teaching, keep in mind any 20 rule, it doesn't need to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in doing this. It just takes practice. So the tools you will find in the end, if you step back and think about them, are relatively simple. It's just using them over and over and over again. And to this day, I mean, Jess has been doing this for 100+ years. No offense, Jess. And every time we learn new things, every new team we work with, every new group we work with, this is a different perspective in going through this. So there's nothing, just think about 80-20 rule and going through this. It doesn't have to be perfect as you go through this, but it works.
All right. Any other questions?
All right. So, like I said, for those of you, Chewy, if you could have conversations with Bill and with Brad and kind of get them in there. In your case, there's a lot of stuff that's up there that I think probably needs to come off just because narrow the scope. But I think just walk them through the exercise and let them come up with that and say, right, that's part of their learning process. And then Kevin, I will send you the email addresses to Susie and to Josh so you can also have the same conversation. So they have an opportunity between now and Friday to go in and look at what you guys have done and add. Chewy, you may want to be able to let them know that they're going to get that contact from Kevin.
Okay, I'll let him know.
Okay. All right, guys. I will see everyone on Friday.